Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another podcast from the Gold Coast Locals by Len and Ridley. We've been out and about this week. We spoke to Max last week, Max Christmas, and had a good chat with Max and caught up after 2 episodes and found out a little bit more about the Gold Coast. And so it's been pretty nice out and about. It's been a bit cool. Gold Coast weather's come down quite substantially from something that we're used to. But, we're all getting used to 8 or 9 degrees and 10 degrees here. I was lucky enough to cruise along the beach this morning with Ridley. We went and found a nice little spot and had a little bit of a bit of a sunbake in the beautiful sun out of the westerly, and watched the 6-foot waves pump through surface out the front of Focus, and a couple of the boys getting barreled. So it's happens all the year on the Gold Coast. It's a beautiful part of the world, and we're very lucky to get to enjoy all these sort of things. So anyone out there who's listening to the podcast and you haven't been into Main Beach or into our hood, come on down and check it out. It's as I said, it's a beautiful part of the world. The surf's going off this morning, so it's only about 3 or 4 boys out, which was only for not professionals, but only for well-versed surfers, guys who know what they were doing. Because I did talk to a couple of young ladies who jumped in the water, and I said to them, "Get out of the water," because they were going north at a rate of knots, so it wasn't a good experience for them. So a couple of Polish girls. So anyone who does listen to this podcast and doesn't know anything, swim between the red and yellow flags, get our lifesavers a bit of a chance, and help us all out and enjoy our beautiful hood. So here we are. We're back at our venue, Manos. So sitting in Manos this afternoon, and we've got another very prominent Gold Coast local in here today, a gentleman, Nick McCallum. You've been around the coast for a while now?
20 years.
20 years?
Yep, 20.
I'm sure you say, mate,
I'm a youngster.
You're a youngster. You are a youngster.
Newbie.
Yes, no, 20 years is a good stick around this area. So, Nick, you've been around for 20 years. Give us a little bit of an insight into where you've come from, and how did you get to Main Beach?
Well, I've slowly travelled north. I grew up in Victoria. I did most of my professional career in Sydney, and now I've been here for the 20 years. I work in the film industry, so we're all a band of gypsies at the best of times. So being here on the Gold Coast only makes sense because it's such a wonderful place to live, but it also has, probably the best facilities and for filmmaking in the country, purpose-built. Sydney has sound stages, but they were modelled from heritage buildings that was taken from the people. But the studios here are magnificent. There's more studios opening here. In fact, there's Screen Queensland have 2 in Brisbane. Pinnacle have opened 3, and there are 9 in the Village Roadshow complex. So including the largest one in the Southern Hemisphere, Studio 9 out there. So we've got the largest concentration of filmmaking facilities, excellent crew, world-class crew, and, of course, brilliant locations.
Interesting. And so the facilities that we do have here, I know that, on the media and through the media you always hear, like just recently we've had Tom Hanks here doing a movie and all that sort of stuff. So is this an investment that's been done by the government to get these things up, or is it a private investment to be able to have all these studios?
Well, the studios began about 10 years before I came up here. Dino De Laurentiis. He carved out 2 or 3 studios where they are now in Oxenford, and through government incentives and state incentives, more and more filmmaking came here. Queensland enjoys 255 days of sunshine each year, perfect conditions to make films.
Beautiful.
And so everyone gravitated towards this, and the studios grew and the crews became more and more experienced. And as we all know, we've had Thor and Aquaman and Pirates of the Caribbean, and the film community is a circus that provides money through to the community. We don't come and ask of money. We put money into the knock-on effects to hotels and restaurants and hire cars and lumber yards and, of course, employment. And
yeah. I know. A few times I've seen, obviously, parts of movies and that sort of stuff being made over at like Macintosh Park, for example, and the infrastructure that they take with them to be able to film. And I don't know how long that is actually part of a movie or whatever they're doing. It might only be 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. But the infrastructure that they have to be able to film that is, it's huge, isn't it? There's a lot of organisation. There's a lot of stuff that goes with it.
Well, we're the creative military.
Yeah.
And we do have to, be absolutely to the minute, weather dependent on where we take the crews, because time is money.
Yep.
And any company move that you may have to make during the day, it will only take an hour away, and an hour will cost up to $25,000, $30,000.
Wow. Yeah, because it's not cheap. I mean, when they say it costs $300 million to make a movie, when you have a look at, as I say, these infrastructures, the studios they use, all of that sort of stuff they've got to put together, the coordination, the togetherness of all that sort of stuff. It's there's a lot that goes into it, isn't there?
Well, there is, and I mean that's the joy, that's the challenge, and I think. We're blessed with an array of locations. I've certainly used the jungles up in Mount Tambourine and the beaches and a lot of the urban infrastructure over and over again. And we've turned this part of the world into Santa Barbara and Mexico and New Guinea, Borneo, East Timor. As a versatility, it's fantastic. And that's the joy about being able to live and work in an environment that can provide that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember. Was it the Pirates of something of the Caribbean or something where they built a ship up on the sandbank at the end of the spit there.
Yeah. And
they did a whole infrastructure. It was absolutely amazing. They built all this sort of stuff, and I know because I went past in a boat one day. And you just looking at it going, wow, what, like just the time and effort to build those sets and all that sort of stuff away. It's just, as I said, there's a lot of work, and it obviously employs a lot of people through that process as well.
Absolutely. It can employ, large production can have 1,400 people on it.
Wow.
I run a department. I'm a production designer, and as a key creative and head of department, I mean, most of the films that I work on, I run a team of 120 people for my department alone.
Yeah, and so the length of actually making a movie. So a movie that you've made, and I know you've made a few movies through the coast and that sort of stuff. So how long does it actually take to make a movie?
Well, the larger ones you have a longer period of pre-production. So that's where you do make those sort of pragmatic decisions and where you're going to film. You have your location scouts and your studio builds. You're ready, all of that. And the actual shooting normally is about 12 weeks, 15 weeks on a larger one. I mean, this is for a feature film. You can shoot a feature in 6 weeks. It all depends on the number of location sets and what the budget of the film is. But generally, for a larger production, you're 12 to 15 weeks.
Right. So you get everything set up, all done, created, and then the big fellas, the actors or actresses, they just fly in, look good, fly out.
Yeah, we make them look good, and that's the job is to give them the largest canvas with the director to be able to drive the drama.
Uh-huh.
And to make them feel comfortable and relaxed, and they do while they're here. They can live and work very easily on the Gold Coast. The pest factor is very low, and they enjoy that. They enjoy coming here to make films. Yeah,
it's funny because a couple of young fellas I know, when Johnny Depp and Amber Heard were here, they were all beside themselves because they went out to a restaurant down in Broadbeach, and Amber Heard was there by herself, and she sat down and all the boys started talking to her and all this. They were just king of the kids for a week. They were so bloody rapt that they got to sit down. They reckon that she was a really nice lady. She chatted with them and conversed with them and that sort of stuff. So it's good to have, I don't know, I suppose big stars and that sort of stuff come here and put a name on the Gold Coast for our movie industry, because as I said, it is becoming. Well, not becoming. It is a substantial industry and a substantial draw card for our for community and not only that, but our government funds and all that sort of stuff as well.
Well, international status as well. We can put 2 or 3 large productions into Queensland back to back, and there's $1 billion into the economy before you know it.
Yeah.
The arts in general contribute about $110 billion annually to Australia's GDP.
Wow.
I mean, someone like Qantas may do 10, 15.
Yep.
Do the math. We're doing much more than that. So
Yeah.
it's a fundamental part of a nation. And if we can have these facilities and attract these larger films, and we're in a very good position under the unfortunate circumstances that the world sees itself at the moment with our, we've got a very low infected rate here, and we've got fabulous facilities, and the world is looking to come here and to make their films. The demand for product is enormous.
The COVID thing has had an effect on so many so many entities in the arts, music, and the whole sort of thing. It is devastating. It's absolutely devastating. So I take it the movie industry's had a massive big hit with this whole process as well?
Oh, it stopped overnight.
Yes.
And, we can now congregate. We've come back to filming, shooting. There's 2 productions in Queensland at the moment. There's several that are hovering. About to commit. Elvis, as we know, is about to restart as soon as they can get their ducks in a row, I guess. So when it's safe to do so, we'll be making as many films as we ever did.
Because I suppose it's very cost effective when you look at the, especially the Australian dollar against the American dollar and that sort of thing now. It's extremely viable for them to come over here and make movies, isn't it?
Well, they also get government incentives, so you can get a further, if you're a bona fide co-production, we have several treaty countries. You can get a 40% rebate from the government on what is deemed the Australian spend.
Yep.
Or if you're an international company, let's say Disney, who I just work with, or Universal, they can come here and they can get 16% rebate as a location film. And there is a government pot of money that can actually beef that up to as much as 30%.
Oh, cool. So it is a thriving industry, and it's growing too by the sound of it. There's an opportunity for it to grow much larger?
Well, there is. If you look at, the high-end television series that Netflix and Prime and Amazon are now producing, these are, expensive, good-looking productions. They attract, major film stars, and these are the new sort of projects on the block.
Yep.
That will come in and shoot alongside the conventional larger tentpole films that we see, like Aquaman and Thor and Elvis.
Yep. So something that just goes straight to the big screen, or something, like as the Netflix. You mentioned Netflix, and I take it Stan, and they all make their own productions as well now.
Absolutely.
So that would have enhanced it as well.
Yes, the more and more avenues to stream. You either go to the big screen. I think the cinema will bound back. I think there's an experience to be had in a movie house, and we all know that young relationships are formed by going to shopping malls and having an experience in a movie house. It's time immemorial. So I think that will come back in a big way, and there are major productions like Disney have Mulan that's about to be released, and Tenet, it was a big science fiction film. So there are large productions, a new James Bond as well, waiting for the cinemas to be up and running as much as they are. But then the Netflix, they have their subscription channels, and we've seen HBO with Game of Thrones. And
yeah, that's right. I mean, that was a huge production, wasn't it? Game of Thrones.
Massive, and there were Australians involved in that.
Yes.
The production designer was an Australian, so there's a lot of Australians out there who are working on films, and there are a lot of people who don't actually know that they are Australians.
I know. Each year when the Oscars come along, and you're sitting down and they come up on the TV and they go, this guy for cinematography and this guy for that and this guy for this, and you go, I've never heard of these dudes, and heard of these people. So, but they are very talented. We have some great talented people in the industry throughout our country.
World class, without question.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's good to see that the film industry is getting some legs and has some thing, because I think it's an important industry that we can utilise on, and especially for us on the Gold Coast where we are. To enhance, like as you said, our economy and all those sorts of things as well. So
it is a massive boost for the economy, but also it's how we find our voice and who we are as a nation, and how we can call these universal stories out to the world.
Yeah. So what sort of movies? Give us a little bit of an indication into the life of Nick when it comes to movies. So what sort of movies have you been involved in, and what sort of characters have you bumped into and you wouldn't want to bump into again?
Oh, look, I've been blessed. I've just had a wonderful career, still am. I believe my apprenticeship is coming to an end and my career might just start.
I love the way you think.
Well, yes, I've been involved in over 50 productions and been lucky to work in over 14 countries around the world.
A young man in 50 productions already.
Well, yes, your flattery will get you everywhere. But I've had, it's difficult to know which one is your favourite. They're all my children.
Yes.
But some do stand out. I was very lucky to be the designer on Bryce Courtney's The Potato Factory, and that was a terrific production. I had to design Dickensian in London and then Colonial Australia. Kokoda was a terrific experience here.
Great movie, yeah.
Sanctum was one I designed.
Oh, okay, yep.
James Cameron produced that, the Avatar producer, director.
Yep.
And my challenge there was to build an entire flooded cave system in the studios. I filled up about 4 or 5 sound stages.
An entire flooded cave system.
Yes.
Inside the studio.
Yes. Yeah. There's only about 2 shots in the real cave and then in film, and people were phoning up the Queensland Tourist Board asking, where are these amazing caves in Queensland? We all want to go and have a look at them. I had to say, in the bin.
So that's it. They come in, they build them up, they make them, and then gone.
Well, it's very difficult to store stuff. And, each film has got its different machinations of what it's needed. Sometimes, there was a cave that was built out the back of Gowanaba, and a lot of productions used that. That was a long-standing set. But generally, when you do build, it's difficult to store afterwards, and so you either start again if it goes into a second season, or the next job's completely different. So.
Totally different. I know we were talking. We had a little bit of a chat, and you were telling me about the pool, the big.
Oh, there's a big tank.
The big tank. Yeah, they filled it up, and that.
Well, I did that for Sanctum. I filled up all the tanks over there. I did a production called Bait, and that was set in a supermarket that got hit by a tsunami and brought in all of these man-eating sharks. Tore everyone to pieces. And so the Soundstage 5 has a permanent tank in there, and I put a flooded car park in there. And 7, I built a pool and flooded a supermarket. And I did that by actually buying an IGA, building a pool, buying an IGA supermarket that closed down in Townsville, brought it all in, set it up. And then when it came to flood it, as you can only be in 4 feet of water safely, otherwise anything deeper than that you need buddy divers and safety divers, everyone said, well, how are you going to flood this? And I cut everything in half and lowered the roof.
Ah,
so
okay.
I had a 12-ton roof on 12 pulleys systems, and we could raise and lower it whenever we wished.
Wow.
That was a great production, but the big tank, that was for Sanctum, and I had a set called The Labyrinth, which was built in Soundstage 8. At that time, the largest there. I had a 14-metre waterfall in there, and they sort of get lost and trapped in there, and then they get completely lost in a labyrinth. I'd built that out of concrete, so when we had the full underwater sequences, I just lifted it all up, repositioned it in the big tank, and they swam around it.
Wow.
And so that worked a real treat.
Yep. And it's easy, and then with all the cameras and all the work and everything else, it all just comes together like no one would know.
Well, that's just the trickery.
It is.
And you do make these pragmatic decisions because, you do save money that way and time. You're not always doubling up on different sets.
Yep. So do you come up with the ideas? You get the opportunity to come up with the ideas of how you think this is going to be portrayed best, or what?
Well, that's my job.
Yep.
Being a key creative along with the director of photography, the director and editors and composers. But it's always best to make sure that, the director always thought it was his idea in the first place.
They like to have the last say, do they?
Well, my job is to protect the director's vision. And if they have vision or not, well, then we'll just sort of tackle that as
okay.
Most of them do. Don't get me wrong. No,
I was going to say, are they? Is a director do you have a preference which directors you want to work with, and there's some that you might vie away from, or
No,
they're difficult, or you just go with anyone?
I would, I enjoyed working with an enormous array of directors. I've worked, maybe with 40 different directors.
Yep.
And, mainly all of them approach it from the same place. They want to tell a fantastic story on the biggest canvas, and they protect their characters, and they expect everybody else that they've surrounded themselves with to do the same thing.
Right. What about, digressing a little bit from that sort of stuff, what about actors? Like, some of them, you always hear these stories about, what do they call it when they have the things that they want? Some of them are really easy to work with, and some of them are really difficult, and all that. Is there specific actors that you might have worked with that you sort of go, like, oh, what did they get her, or what did they get him, or?
Well, mainly they get them to put an audience in front of, put bums on seats.
So that's why they're doing it, yeah.
It's a business.
Yep.
And so they'll get the best and actors, and Australia's got so many talented actors. Look, I grew up in a family of actors, so I know exactly how difficult they can be. But you do have to. It's not indulgent. Indulging them. You have to support them, because they've got probably the trickiest job. It's shot out of sequence, so they may be dying on day one and being born on day 101.
Yeah.
And everything in between backwards. So, they've got to have it in their head, their characters, the whole time, and you've just got to be there every step of the way for them. And I've worked with some of the great actors. I've been very lucky. Worked with Glenn Close and Julie Christie. And,
cool.
They've been, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, because
a lot of Australian actors, of course, Jack Thompson.
Yeah, it always has intrigued me, because there's so many people involved in a movie, and they're not just the actors. You've got, as you said, all your set creators. You've got all you guys. All these other things. So, like, being able to manage that many people and have them all come together, and then have one. You always hear about, so and so is really picky about this, or he doesn't like that, or he doesn't like this. So to have one person come in and mess with all of that smoothness that's been created, sometimes for me, that'd frustrate the crap out of me.
Well, look, it does happen, but these are the sorts of things that becomes part of the challenge.
Part and parcel.
And really, it is the director that probably has to suffer those sorts of things most, if they are a thief of time, or don't agree loudly in front of the crew about what the motivation might be for that particular scene. And some people get a bit tired and emotional, but on the main, everybody is there for the one thing. For
the one thing, one reason to get, and it's a get together thing. It's not I suppose it's a job. They want to get their job done and move on to the next one.
And it's very tiring for cast, because they're there at 4 a.m. in the morning, and they're probably still having a dinner to wind down and go through the next day's work by 11 p.m. at night. And you can be doing that for weeks on end.
Yeah. So, Nick, let me ask you, what is your favourite movie?
Well, look, there are some of them are like the favourite for a month or two, and then and then it'll be something else. But my formative years were the 70s, and I keep going back to those marvellous films that were made there, and you'd have to say Apocalypse Now is up there.
Oh, really?
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. To see it at the time and to keep revisiting it from time to time, it really did take you into a world that was completely all, kind of
crazy.
Well, it was a crazy film, but a lot of them were in those days. I really enjoyed, there were films like Clockwork Orange, and there were films like Clute and Soldier Blue, and I mean, they were really extraordinary films that were being made. We had a renaissance of amazing films, I think, in the 90s, when Pulp Fiction and I Heart Huckabee and, being John Malkovich and those sorts of films came out. And now I think there's a re-emergence of those sorts of stories being told. So
yes,
I think that's really fabulous.
As a director, that Quentin Tarantino, he came up with a a different concept. I remember, Reservoir Dogs back in the day, and then the Pulp Fiction thing, and then having 3 stories all told in the one movie, and he sort of changed the movies from that sort of perspective a little bit, didn't he?
Oh, no, absolutely. Clever. And I mean, he knew what he was doing. He was in charge, he's in charge of his material.
Yeah.
And so that shines through. Some of his later work, I think, probably was a little sort of a skip through the park, but that early work of his was extraordinary.
Yeah, no, very, very great. Great movies, a few of the movies that he's made, and I haven't seen the recent one, but someone was telling me that as well is a great movie. You mentioned Skip, and I've had a little bit of a conversation with a good mate of mine. He was telling me that you've got a little bit of history with the Australian bouncing kangaroo.
Well, I do. My father created Skippy, so and was Australia's sort of classic export at the time. It became a cultural icon, really, and she celebrates her 50th birthday anniversary this year.
50 years for Skippy.
Yes,
Wow.
and she's been the Royal Mint struck a coin, and Qantas have named a Dreamliner after her, so she is a superstar.
Yeah,
in that regard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Doesn't matter where you go around the world, everyone believes that every kangaroo is called Skippy. It's one of those things that people relate to. Well, that would have been an interesting creation, the Skippy thing. So it wasn't just one kangaroo, was it?
No, there was a crew of Skippies. There was about 26 or all up there were 91 episodes made.
Yeah.
And it's an eastern grey. A kangaroo is not as easy to train as a dog. So, each one would do its sort of different trick. One would open a letterbox, or one could push open a car door, or the other could speak Italian, whatever it was at the time, play drums.
Skippy always amazed me how he was able to communicate with humans, and like as you were saying yesterday, like there's a helicopter over there, or this is coming in.
Exactly.
But no, it's amazing though. So, and I suppose when you look at it, what we were saying, so you've got Skippy, you've got Flipper.
Yes, there was probably about 3 or 4 handful of live-action animal films ever made for television. It'd be Lassie, Flipper, Skippy's one of them.
Yep.
Then you had Rin Tin Tin, Mr. Ed, but they really didn't sort of do much. Mr. Ed never really got out of his stall much.
No, he didn't.
And there was a grizzly bear one, I think. But essentially, they've only been the live-action ones. Now it's all getting into sort of photoreal CGI. I don't know if you've seen The Call of the Wild, but the dog they use in that is a complete invention. It's
animated or
totally animated.
Wow.
It's so difficult to really tell that it is.
So the old days when they used to say, don't work with animals and children. So they've slowly worked their way out of that process, and now they're animating the whole thing. And
well, they are, I guess. I haven't seen an animated child.
No, well, yeah.
Yet, but I'm sure the day will come.
I'm sure the day will come. They'll make it easy to be able to talk to the young fellas and have a little bit of a play with them and get them across the line. So no, it's interesting that as movies and that sort of stuff have developed and evolved, how different, like you just say, the cinematography and all those different things are. When you look back at the Skippy days and you see Skippy picking that little claw comes out and he's grabbing a leaf off the tree or pointing at something or something like that. The animation and the way that movies have developed and that sort of thing now is amazing, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Technology has really made a big difference. I mean, particularly as a production designer, much of the work goes into post-production. So you could have some set extensions, or you've got, whole inventions of a beast. We had a few for the sharks in bait.
Yep.
There was 3 elements of that. We had 2 real sharks, so we had built one that could swim, and the other sort of like a ramming shark, and then there was I think the rest of them was CGI.
So to make something like that, they must start doing that a long time before the actual production starts.
So the animatronics can take a long, long time, but there's again in Queensland very clever people that can do that, and we built 2 sharks. They were called the Finn brothers,
The Finn brothers. There you go.
Neil and Tim. And one actually was able through hydraulics to swim under its own accord, and this thing was 14 feet long. It was huge.
And how long ago was this?
Bait was probably about 2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess 2012.
Yeah.
I think Sanctum was 2011. Yes. So it must have been 2012.
Wow. So it's amazing what they can do. And as I said, us who just go to the pitches and have a look and go, wow, that was a great movie. Even with, the James Bond movies, like the work that goes into them, and, they're blowing stuff up here and blowing stuff. Someone's got to get hurt through this process, surely. But they don't. You don't hear it.
Well, you don't wish anybody. The safety coordination is just, paramount.
Yeah. But, when you see these stunt guys too, riding motorbikes over roofs, and you just go, this is just madness. Someone,
Well, that's their daytime job, so I guess they make it as easy for themselves as they can.
Mate, you can have that. You can have that.
I'll sit back and I'll build the ramp for them and the roofs.
Yep.
They can bring in the bike and ride them.
Really? Yep.
But no, I'm working a lot with stunt because we need to collaborate very closely and dovetail into what the stunt department need.
Yep.
And what special effects need in so far as explosives, and then what post-production needs. So, the design and the art department are a real integral part of being able to bring all of that together and give you a real experience.
Yeah, because you could just imagine the safety requirements to do, like, the days of Skippy, which is 50 years ago, against the safety requirements of...
Fury Road.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Like, you could... Just imagine, you could just add weeks and millions, I'd reckon, to just those things that have been brought into the line and to comply with everything.
Well, yes, but sort of the audience's expectations have grown too since the days of Skippy. And the big thing about Skippy at the time was it was the first television series shot in Australia in colour. So Europe got to see the colour of our oceans and our eucalypts for the very first time. Everything before that had been Spy Force in black and white and things like that. So that's part of the great appeal. Yeah. These days, colour doesn't always do it for people. Explosions and stunts do. So, the focus is on that. Yeah,
it's funny, people go to a car race because they don't want to see the cars go around. They want to see someone crash.
Well, it's a bit of a human trait that...
It is, unfortunately.
It is a little dispiriting, but there you go. I mean, that's part of the spectacle.
Yes, and hence why they want to see the building blow up or the high rise fall down or the plane crash, and so it's amazing how how, as I said, they can put all these things together. And you go to the movies, and no one got hurt making this movie. They always have those little things. No animals were hurt during this process or anything like that. So,
well, I know most of them were CGI anyway. So.
That's very interesting. So the movie industry itself, have you found it to be a consistent opportunity in Australia for you? Do you see that as growing as an industry now?
Well, no doubt it's growing because of the the wide range of product being able to stream on a phone. There's YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, and then you've got your major studios for cinema releases and free-to-air television. I mean, there's more and more demand across different streaming avenues. So it's an ever-expanding business, that's for sure. And I mean, we're well placed here to take advantage of that and to grow with it. And I think it's going to grow amazing over the next 10 years.
10 years, yeah. I know I did some work actually in 2000 at Fox Studios.
Oh, okay.
Did some work down there when I was a younger chap. And so just Fox Studios doesn't seem to have the ability to do what we do up here, is that sort of?
Well, no, they do large films. Marvel have been shooting in there up until they were asked to shut down because of COVID. They'll resume. They've had large matrix and all been shot there, but they were never purpose-built studios. And being in the old showgrounds, we used to use them and to build sets in when they were the dog pavilion, and we'd all set up in the old ANZ Bank.
Yep.
But since Fox did take them over, there's also another 25 or 30 businesses in there.
Yep.
So you sort of share the lot with all of this other kind of trucks coming and moving, and you just don't have that ownership that you get when you move in a production into the Village Roadshow studios.
And so how many studios would there be at Village Roadshow?
Well, there are 9.
9.
And the tank. 2 tanks, actually, a smaller tank. And 9 has only been open, I guess, built 2 years now, and it's the largest soundstage in the Southern Hemisphere.
That's what I was going to say. So what sort of area would these things take up?
Oh, they're vast. Offhand, I can't even think.
Huge.
18,000 metres.
Wow.
Maybe more.
So it's a big deal just creating it to be able to do it.
Well, they are, and they have to be air conditioned. You have to be able to put rigs in and lighting grids, and you've got to have a sort of your large dock doors so you can get access in there, and it's got to be soundproofed. So they're expensive to build. One burnt down. I think it's still the largest insurance claim in Australian film history.
Wow.
That was on a movie I was associated with. I was the art director looking after The Village. It was for House of Wax. It was a film that starred Paris Hilton.
Yeah, that was a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 2005. Long time.
Yeah, long time ago. Yeah, I do remember. Because it was a big fire. It was a big...
Huge, blew the roof off. But the safety officers, and we were talking about that before, everyone was out, no one was hurt. They lost a lot of belongings. Everybody then mustered into the emergency areas, heads were counted, and they said, you can all go home now, but no one could get their keys to their cars because they'd all been left in the bags inside with wallets and credit cards, but no one was injured, and that's just the main thing. You always replace cameras and sets, but you can't
replace lives. No, exactly. So just digressing away from movies, I want to ask you a question about your mode of transport now.
Well, I'm on an e-scooter.
You are on an e-scooter,
and I'm loving it. It's just, for me, it's like skiing again. I didn't think I'd be able to get across the street on it without breaking my neck, but I've proved that to be wrong, and I've done about 500 kilometres on this thing. But I do go to the butcher, I go to the baker, I go to the candlestick maker. It's not just street surfing. It's a real tool to get around, and it's fabulous. And the Gold Coast being so flat and wonderful wide pathways, and bike riders know that. And now us e-scooters.
Yeah. Well, Ridley and I spend a lot of time on the bike paths, getting around and doing our exercise and rehab and that sort of stuff. So yeah, we do, and it's quite. You see more and more of them now, and I think it's fantastic because, if more and more people, especially like us who are in our community here, we've got access to so many things that we don't need a car. We don't need to get along, and the e-scooters and the electric bikes and those sorts of things are becoming far more prominent.
Well, I've been travelling to China for 32 years, I guess, and when I was first up there, bikes were the only mode of transport, and the skies were blue, and it was just like this flowing river. And now you go to China, and it's a moving car park.
It's terrible,
and the pollution is appalling. And I think because everyone's slowed down these past 6 months with the lockdowns, and everything's slowed, and I think that the streets have thinned out a little bit, and suddenly the emergence of e-bikes and e-scooters, people have seen that there's a cleaner way of getting around, and it's probably...
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one of the things that amazed me the most when COVID first came along, because I too have done a fair bit of business in China and spent a bit of time in there, and you go to Shanghai and you look up and there's no way in the world you can see the sky. No. And to see the sky clear up in those sort of countries so quick when everyone was locked down and put at home, you sort of go, wow, it's, if more people looked into the opportunity to use the the e-bikes, especially in Australia, I think, let's not get to that stage. And, we use the e-bikes, use them in our community properly, and they're safe,
Oh, no, absolutely. I think it's a valid, mode of transport.
Yeah.
And if you can, do your shopping and enjoy it at the same time, it's much better than sitting at a set of traffic lights for 10 minutes.
I agree. And I think that is too. It's like, especially with our environment here now, where we live, I mean, it is enjoyable running around on them, isn't it?
Oh, early morning run to the baker and you've got the sun coming up over the Broadwater and a little bit of Deep Purple in your ears. Well,
who knows what's going on?
Living the dream.
That's it, living the dream, absolutely. Flat out on that e-bike. Let's go. Let's get there. No. Oh, that's excellent. Well, that's very, very cool. So, Nick, I want to say thank you for coming in and having a chat with us today.
It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
No, I really, really appreciate it. I mean, that's our whole thing is I don't think people actually understand, the diversity of the people that we have in our community. And, we all do different jobs and we've all had different experiences. And, one of the ideas about the podcast is to be able to just let people know, some of the things that our local community have, what we do, the knowledge that we have. And, as I said, the experience. So I want to say thank you very much for coming in and spending some time with
Absolute pleasure.
with Ridley and I. Ridley hasn't said too much today.
I've met Ridley. So
you've met Ridley. Yeah, he's flat out at the moment, Ridley. He's not talking to anyone. He's got nothing to say. So, Nick, once again, I'd like to say thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Really do appreciate it. I'd like to thank all you guys out there for listening to us today and getting a bit of an insight into another one of our Gold Coast locals. So take it easy out there, look after yourselves, and have a great day. Cheers.